Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
A couple of, I guess I would call them minor NHL trades to tell you about. We'll get to that in a bit. Right now, though, we're joined by, from KJR Sports Radio in Seattle, Ian Furness. How are you, sir?
Gentlemen, good afternoon. Good morning. How are you?
Good, very well. How into I know you're into the Apple Cup, but how into the World Cup are you? How big of a deal is it in Seattle, Wales, and the Americans playing to a 1-1 tie the other day? They take on England on Friday.
Yeah, big enough deal. TV ratings here were good, actually, for that game. Just based on that, there was certainly interest here. I'll tell you, one of the cool things for us in Seattle is that, by the end of the game, there were two players on the pitch that were from the Seattle area. Jordan Morris went to school at Mercer Island, plays for the Sounders, obviously. Sounders FC, everybody knows Jordan and his story. And then DeAndre Yedlin started his career, played high school soccer, grew up in Seattle, and then played for the Sounders before moving overseas. So that was kind of cool to see. And bad result, bad PK that they gave up. I mean, just a bonehead play, but they still have a chance to advance with a decent result against England, and they should smoke Iran. But there's enough interest, especially when the U.S. plays. But the numbers have been pretty good TV-wise.
Apple Cup, World Cup, Grey Cup. I know you watched it. You tweeted that out. Tell us about that.
I watched like 5 minutes.
Oh,
I actually, I flipped it over on Sunday night, and I recorded it, and I was going to watch it. And I figured it would be a safe zone as I'm kind of scrolling through Twitter, and then I forgot that I follow guys like Farhan and others, and I'm like, bloody hell. It's like next thing you know, I knew the result, so I didn't watch the rest of it. I was kind of bummed out. But, big win by the Argos, disappointment in the Peg, but if you're in the Peg, you're used to disappointment, right?
Actually, the TV numbers up here were really good for the Grey Cup. Maybe we'll get into that today or later this week.
By the way, that stadium looks awesome. That's in Regina, right?
Regina. It is. Yeah. It's tremendous.
Great looking stadium. Yeah,
awesome. That team has some money. Has some money there. I'm going to ask you the cliche talk radio, talk TV, sports question now.
Okay.
Was it the right time for a Seahawks bye week? That's number 2 on the list, I think.
Donnie, you're better than that, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I'm not.
Better than that.
Yeah, well, you know what? The number one question is, what are your thoughts on the victory? But they didn't play, so we can't do that.
Or talk about. No. Can't we talk about the seats at Rogers Arena instead? Can't we?
Yes.
Or the fact that Ryan's looking to buy a house down in Bellingham. I mean, can't we talk about that? I mean,
near his cheese.
No, good time. They've had buys, honestly, in the last few years, and I'll tell you, it's kind of weird because it's like, okay, this is really the first real year we've had where, the games are full stadiums and nobody's wearing a mask and all of that, so it's kind of the years run together a little bit. But there's been years that I recall that there was like a bye week 4 or 5, and I'm not sure. I don't think that accomplishes anything in the NFL. I think by that time you're still fresh enough. They're a relatively healthy team. So, but I think just coming away from Germany, there was kind of a dud they laid. We talked about that last week, and it was probably a good time for a bye. And now they've got a favorable schedule coming up. So, I usually judge it how I feel, because when you travel with these guys all the time, you're kind of feeling like, okay, I'm gassed, I'm tired. And we were really front heavy with road games. There's only 2 road games left the rest of the season. They play in LA in a couple weeks, and then they play in Kansas City on Christmas Eve. So, they've got a very favorable schedule. They should be fresh and ready to go.
Ian, can you talk about the fact that the 49ers have pulled even with the Seahawks at 6-4 atop the NFC West? Talk about that.
Again, you're better than that. I know you're better than that.
Again, no, I'm not.
I know you're better than that.
Who's the better team?
I think, to use a hockey term, I think the Niners are an absolute wagon. I mean, they are just chugging right now, and they are it's so funny because, much like Canada, the States have like a place, like we're very East Coast centric, right? Like you guys, I know, are very Toronto centric.
Oh yeah.
And we're the same way here. Like the fact that the people aren't paying as much attention to I'm shocked. They are loaded. They've got so many. A lot of times down here, I don't know if you guys play fantasy football up in north of the border. It's a really big thing here. It's why, really, to be honest with you, it's probably the biggest reason the NFL is so damn popular is everybody plays fantasy football. Everybody's got a stake in the game every week. One of the things going on right now is if you have a guy in the 49ers, it's not great to have him because they have so much skill. If you've got McCaffrey, they also have Elijah Mitchell at running back. If you've got Debo, well, they've also got Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. I mean, they're just loaded offensively. Their defense has been really good for a while now. They've got maybe the best tandem of linebackers in the league with Greenlaw and Warner. Their secondary is solid enough. They're really good. I think the Seahawks are playing basically for a wild card spot, and I think they're in a great position to get a wild card spot. And this year, which is supposed to be a rebuild year for so many people, at least in their minds, not the Seahawks, that's a good thing. Now, they play in 3 weeks, I guess it is, on Thursday Night Football, and that will determine the division. It's It's a two-team race. It's Seattle and San Francisco. The Rams aren't going to go back to the postseason with 7 losses right now. The Cardinals are even more of a disaster, even though they beat the Rams. They got 7 losses. It's a 2-team race, and whoever doesn't go to win the division is going to probably go as a wild card team. So, but yeah, that game in 3 weeks will decide it. But for me, if I'm talking about it, I'm talking about the 49ers having the best roster right now in the NFC West and probably the best roster in the NFC, period.
Wow. All right, let's talk about your wildly successful hockey team. Shane Wright finally got in a game last night, and boy, watching his goal last night, Ian, and the way
let's preface
American Hockey League
doesn't matter. He finally played, and the way he separated himself from that defenseman on that breakaway goal, you could see the skill, you could see the skating, and you could see everything, and the way he put the puck in the net. This kid's going to be a good player. But how important to finally get this kid some ice time?
Well, I think, Rick, noted hockey analyst Ian Furness has told you a few times that this guy's can play at that level, right? I don't think it's. I saw that highlight and I was like, oh yeah, I thought that all along. I think the problem is, I'm just looking at their lines right now. Schwartz, Wenberg, Barrett. So here are their centers: Wenberg, Beniers, Yanni Gord. That's 1, 2, 3. And then their fourth line center is Geeky, who's having actually a nice little bounce back year. The pride of the Tri-City Americans, and he's on a line. The fourth line for this team is Donato, Geeky, and Sprong. Like that's a pretty good fourth line. Like hell, last year that would have been Seattle's second line. So I think because of the depth that they've acquired, Wenberg is playing better than I thought he would. I wasn't a Wenberg fan last year, but you can't argue with what he's doing, especially with Schwartz and Burakovsky. Beniers is, and I went through it. That's probably wrong. Beniers, McCann, Eberle is their number 1 line. It should be at least. And Schwartz, Burakovsky, Wenberg, that's your number 2 line. And if Yanni Gord and Bjorkstrand are on your 3rd line, I mean, it's hard to find a spot for Shane Wright right now. It really is. And it's hard because, it's just a dumb rule, guys. It really is. And I mean, listen, maybe ask your boy Toigo sometime when he's on, like if they can figure this thing out, because it makes no bloody sense that, that you have to, they have the little loophole so that he's on a conditioning assignment because if you miss 5 straight games, you can send him down for 2 weeks. But I just hate the setup. And I'm talking as a guy, as Donnie, I mean, I spent 10 years in the Dub and actually still do stuff in the Dub. I believe in the CHL. I think it's the greatest place to develop young players. But there has to be a better system, and they have to figure out a way now with the NCAA, the way the NCAA is with all the NIL and all these kids are getting paid. Because remember, that's why you couldn't go from junior to the college ranks and all that kind of stuff. They've got to figure out a better way because these kids, the Shane Wrights of the world, have no business playing in the CHL. It just doesn't help him. But if he can't play in the AHL and all he's doing is, getting practice time in the NHL level, what good is that doing to develop players? And really, if you're the National Hockey League, shouldn't you be in the business of developing good young players for the future, stars of the future, as opposed to having them skate with 2 other guys that are, the Black Aces that day and not skating for the next 2 days? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Hey, I'm off my soapbox and I talked about it, so sorry.
Hey, Seattle hosted Game 3, Canada and the U.S. women's hockey team. It was a good crowd there, Ian. I think
did they? I didn't even know that. Did they? No, I'm sorry.
But there was a good crowd there.
Rick.
I know. I think there was 14,000 there.
That's what they said. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good crowd, and the Kraken, and so is hockey. Are you feeling it more in Seattle right now, Ian?
I think the women's game's a little different deal, to be honest with you. I think they've kind of papered the house, and there's a lot of comps for that. And I mean, there's 2 teams that matter in women's hockey, and it's the 2 teams that played there. So I wouldn't put much stock in that as far as the bigger picture is concerned. I mean, it's great for young girls that play and everything. And it's awesome, and having a daughter, it's cool to see that. I think the bigger test is, and always has been in this market, when you can look and say Seattle has two really successful junior teams that do well at the gate in Everett and Seattle. Seattle especially more so than Everett at the gate. And they've got a long tradition there. I think the Kraken, have kind of done a nice job in the sense that last year was a team that struggled. They were boring to watch. There wasn't a lot of, the tickets are expensive. Well, listen, they're a good hockey team this year. They're probably a playoff contender. They're going to be in the mix all year. And you see that. The juice in that building, guys, I don't know if you've been there yet. It really is something. They do a good job. Mm-hmm. The crowd is good. And I was telling somebody this the other day. I think just, again, based on the totems in the old CHL and WHL, back in the 60s and 70s, the totems through the Breakers / Thunderbirds and now the Silvertips Thunderbirds, and then the other junior teams in the area. There's a lot more hockey fans. There's a lot more hockey fans here than I think mainstream media, which sometimes ignores hockey in our area, understands. I think they're a lot more knowledgeable. Donnie, you coach. You see the youth teams, right, coming across the border all the time. Now you guys can come down and go to the Kraken practice rink. That thing's going, guys. No word of a lie. That thing's going 24/7.
I bet. It's
nuts. And they built 2 other rinks since then too. So we're starting to see that. We're starting to see the sport grow, and I think the enthusiasm's there. Their TV numbers aren't great, but in arena, it's been really good.
Well, I was just going to say in Port Moody, there's a team came up from Seattle, the Snow Kings. The other really impressive team. Really impressive. It was I believe a Pee Wee game. Just really impressive, and it's just going to grow from there. Talk about that, Ian. I'm just kidding.
I will next week.
We're out of time. Ian, thanks for this. Seahawks and Raiders, by the way, on Sunday for folks that don't know.
Yeah, well, tune in, post-game show on Fox 13. We'll see you then.
There you go. We'll split screen it with Chuck. Our thanks to Ian Furness.